Hey, welcome. I'm Paul. Happy to see some very familiar names and some new names too. So we are here today to talk about case studies and data storytelling. And this is a Coeffect hosted virtual workshop. Hopefully y'all can stay for the full 90 minutes. I know that many of you may need to jump after now, and that's totally fine. Super excited to be talking about some real life applied data storytelling from one of my favorite clients and collaborators, the Rocky Mountain Microfinance Institute. So we've got Linda and Teresa here, and we'll be giving them an opportunity to introduce themselves and share a little bit about RMMFI very shortly. So um, in terms of what we're trying to do today, I wanted to make sure that we designed this session. I think we've got a small enough group that we can be interactive. And we want to make this super, super practical. So we want everybody to leave here understanding what data storytelling is, what are the components of this thing, and how can you apply data storytelling principles to the various kinds of data communications that you're doing within your organization, within your business, or maybe even within your everyday life. I wanted to also give you some practical tools and templates for facilitating data centric conversations that help you strengthen relationships. And I really think about data work as a means for building relationships and building shared understanding. So it's not, about the data, it's about the relationship and getting to that point of us really being on the same page about what that data is telling us. And finally, I want, and this is maybe the most important things, I want to make sure everybody leaves with an understanding of how nonprofits can apply some of these data storytelling principles in the day-to-day work by looking at how the Rocky Mountain Microfinance Institute applies some of data storytelling principles in their day-to-day work. So that's where we're going, y'all. That's the game plan. Um, Let me share just a little bit about myself. So I'm Paul Collier. I'm the founder of Coeffect. Started Coeffect 7 years ago, really with the intention of helping small and mid-sized nonprofits establish the fundamentals of their data practice in order to grow their impact and understand how well their organization is doing. And so, data storytelling is an important part of this. It's sort of, data communications goes across all of the work that I do. And so I'm also part of and one of the leaders of this group called Denver Data Storytellers, which is the local data communications meetup. I'm part of the Colorado Evaluation Network, and I've served in a bunch of different sort of volunteer capacities in addition to nonprofit consulting being my day job. And so was super grateful for Linda and Teresa to be here today and to be able to share some of their expertise around data storytelling as well. So would love for y'all to put your name, organization, and title in the chat for me. I know some of you, but I actually don't know very many of you. And so this is just good to help us understand where everybody's coming from. So if you don't mind, just the chat name, organization, title. That would be super helpful for us. Yeah, Hillary, thank you for modeling. I very much appreciate that. Um, and so let's actually, as y'all are doing that, I wanted to just give a quick intro to Linda and Teresa. And Linda and Teresa, you provided a really nice bio, which I am, of course, not going to remember verbatim. But I can tell everybody a little bit about y'all's work. As I mentioned, I've worked with both Linda and Teresa as a consultant to RMMFI and also just as like a friend and colleague in this space. They're both awesome, awesome professionals doing really impactful work. Rocky Mountain Microfinance Institute does a lot of entrepreneurial education and micro lending to support folks who are aspiring entrepreneurs all around Colorado. So with that, why don't I just turn it over to both of you? Would love to for each of you to just give a little bit about your background. Maybe Teresa, I'll pass over to you first, and then Linda.
Sure. Thanks, Paul. Hey, everyone. My name is Teresa Rennie Myers, and I'm the Director of Impact at Rocky Mountain Microfinance Institute, like to ourselves RMMFI. I've been with the organization for about 3.5 years, joined early 2020 to help build our impact team and our impact capacity as the organization has grown from offering one or two programs in Denver to now offering a variety of education, technical assistance, mentorship, and capital across the state of Colorado. I have about 10 years of experience in nonprofit community development work. I have sort of spanned a lot of different types of roles from fundraising to program management to advocacy to impact and evaluation. I wear many hats. I know a little bit about a handful of things. And so I'm not a data scientist, but I am really interested in how our organizations align towards impact, create tools and processes and systems to track that impact in a meaningful way, and use that data and those insights to create more impact for our stakeholders and our communities, and then share that out broadly. So I'm really excited to be able to talk a little bit today, and I will talk things over to Linda.
Thanks, Teresa. My name is Linda Shum. I am the Impact Manager at RMMFI, and I've been in the nonprofit space for about 5 years now. I started out my career in the retail corporate world, and data is always a part of that world. And so I enjoy what I do now because of the impact and the tracking of that impact on our communities, on entrepreneurs. And I work in the organization to really strengthen our internal processes and systems around data collection, data analysis, and our learning processes. So, really executing the vision that Teresa had for our impact team. And I come to this too with a systems thinking lens and a systems change lens, in that data and evaluation helps us understand what change has happened, and then how do we move forward if that's the change we wish to achieve, right? And so I also bring that aspect and how I switched from my corporate lens to a nonprofit lens to an evaluation lens of how do we track that change and what change are we trying to achieve. So really excited to talk about data storytelling today and how we do that at RMFI.
Absolutely. Thanks so much, Linda. Yeah. One of the things I really appreciate about both of you too is that I think all three of us come at the data work from different backgrounds, and this hasn't been the only thing we've ever done. So we have that sort of maybe a cross-disciplinary perspective that I actually think is really helpful in figuring out how do we make data practical. How can we embed, data practice and data storytelling into the everyday work that we do? So just wanted to mention, I really appreciate that about y'all. And again, just super, super grateful for y'all sharing some of your time today. So one of the things I always like to do, and thanks to everybody for putting just really brief bios in the chat. That's awesome. Or, your name, intro, and title. I would love to hear what folks are interested in learning about communicating with data today. And so, you can do one of two things. So I've got this sweet little poll via this tool called Mentimeter. And so I'm going to share my screen because you can either click on the link that I just chatted, or I think you can actually just click this code, scan this QR code, and just share, in one sentence, what are you hoping to learn about communicating with data today? That helps me, Teresa, and Linda guide the conversation in a way that I think will be most valuable for everybody who's here. So hopefully you see that, or hopefully you can click on this with your phone. I'll give you just a second, and then I'll pull up what is coming up for folks. So let us know, what are you hoping to learn about communicating with data, and we can just kind of check out here what is coming up for everybody, and let that sink in for a moment. Yeah, I really appreciate the data with caveats challenge. Trying to figure out, like, how do we not express too much confidence? We don't want to express arrogance or overconfidence with our data, but we also don't want, our message to get lost in too many caveats. So I know that that's a common challenge. We'll definitely talk about narratives. I think we'll talk about processes. Yeah, absolutely. Saying that processes. Um, Strategies to humanize the data through communication. I know that Linda and Teresa are actually really great at this. I aspire to be as strong as they are. communicating nuance that's understandable to non-data audiences. That makes sense. Intuitive visuals that communicate economically, less is more. Super interesting comment here. Awesome. Yeah, and showing the ripple effects of our work into the community and economy. I know that RMMFI has really thought about this. You actually have a really nice theory of change that describes this. So I think that that was where we were hoping to go next. And thank you everybody for sharing, what are you hoping to learn about communicating with data? This is super, super helpful in just guiding our conversation. So I wanted to give Teresa and Linda just a little bit of time to tell y'all about who RMMFI is as context. I think that you were thinking about maybe sharing your theory of change as a way of understanding that, which is also a nice tool for showing these ripple effects. So with that, I'll turn it over to y'all and would love for you guys to, educate all of us a little bit about RMMFI.
Cool. Thanks, Paul. I'll kick this off. And then Linda, if you have other things to kind of chime in for your change related, I'll just take a few minutes to ground us in like what RMMFI does and why we exist. So to give some context for some of the kind of information and data storytelling that we'll be sharing throughout this time together. I'm hoping you all can see my screen because nice little PDFs. We designed our theory of change recently in 2021, sort of through 2022. Coming out of COVID, it became more apparent that the organization had really shifted in a way to better meet the needs of our community. And we wanted to be able to document that, communicate it externally, and then use that as a guiding tool for the organization. So Rocky Mountain Microfinance Institute, kind of starting from the top here, who we serve and what we're about. We work with resilient Coloradans who are ready for business ownership, but have faced marginalization, societal barriers, or low wage employment. We work with all of our entrepreneurs begin with us at lower incomes or lower wealth. We use the area median income as an index. We work with 80% AMI or lower to really just focus our resources. And we work with entrepreneurs from a variety of backgrounds. So we work across locations. We work across the entire state of Colorado, across ages and demographics. And we have a really diverse and a really welcoming community of entrepreneurs. About 90% of our folks in our network run minority-owned businesses. So that's businesses owned by women or people of color. Our theory of change is grounded in our North Star, which is our mission statement as an organization. And we really exist to create the space for communities and people of all backgrounds to realize their unique potential through the power of entrepreneurship. So we've been sitting with our North Star and with our mission statement for a long time, but it wasn't entirely clear as an organization what the big impact we were going for as a group really looked like. And so through a process where we actually worked with Coeffect and another organization called Social Venture Partners, SVP Denver, in a cohort training program to get together our team, get insights from our staff, our board, our entrepreneurs, our funders, our partners. And we were also paired with a personal coach so that we could have a really robust look at kind of describing and documenting and consensus building around the impact we hope to create. So we have three big pillars of impact that we rally around as an organization. And the first one is ownership of self, which is the idea that entrepreneurship activates the potential of me, Teresa, the individual, and can help fulfill my own dreams and ideas. The second is around ownership of wealth, that business ownership is a tool for economic mobility, inclusion, and income and wealth generation. And that third is ownership of community health, the concept that small business, local business, and micro business help us create vibrant and unique and empowered communities, and that our entrepreneurs show up as local leaders. So those are our three kind of like guiding principles around impact. And I mention them because they're going to come up in some information we're going to share later. You'll see our outcome journey, which is the measurable outcomes that we can track and communicate as an organization. Most folks know us for this sort of central outcome here around helping entrepreneurs to launch and capitalize their business, but that is one piece of our overall scope of work. And then we have showing up on here our activities, not connected to any of our specific programs, but broadly around educating, inspiring, supporting, capitalizing, connecting, and advocating. Um, Most people, our sort of signature program is our Business Launch Bootcamp, which is a 12-week accelerator program. We offer a variety of grants, loans, forgivable loans, access to marketplaces, access to mentorship and other opportunities to really surround the entrepreneur with some of the key ways that they can launch and grow their business over time. That's a little bit about our theory of change. I love this as like a very visually appealing logic model, essentially, helping us to get a good tool to communicate what we hope to achieve, both with our own team as well as externally. It's a really solid framework for what data is important to monitor as an organization. And we have some sort of other documents that really align to the different tools we use internally to track these specific metrics, and then help us make decisions on how to allocate our resources and how to find areas where we may be falling shy of our desired outcome or impact, and the ways that we might want to enhance what we do and the activities and the programs that we offer to get towards that impact in a greater sense, and has served as the foundation for a lot of our other impact projects that we will be talking about here. So I will pause. Linda, is there anything you would like to add on theory of change?
No, I think I'm good.
Thanks.
Awesome. Yeah. And I just, I wanted to tie this in for everybody else. Even I think most of us here are working in impact focused organizations, but even if you're working with a business too, it's very useful to have a framework like what Teresa just shared that describes here's what we're trying to accomplish here. And if you can then have that sort of strategic framework that explains, essentially why your organization exists, what it does, what it's trying to achieve, that can be a really great starting point for then communicating data about your organization. So it's, having that is sort of the almost the precondition, the thing that you need in order to really communicate data about your org strategically. And I know that Teresa and Linda are going to show us like how that looks in practice in a second, but I want to drive that point home because some people hear the term theory of change and be like, this isn't really that useful. Actually, in my work, I've found it really critical. And I've changed a lot of minds along the way about the utility of creating something like this for your organization, whether you're explicitly an impact focused nonprofit, whether you're a business. I think that sort of thing can be really, really helpful. So I wanted to, so in this conversation, as I mentioned at the beginning, we're going to go to a few places. One, we're going to talk data storytelling. Second, we're going to talk about sort of engagement strategies. How do we engage folks around data? Actually, at the end of this conversation, we'll have a little bit of, plenty of time for Q&A for Teresa and Linda, including lightning round questions. So to prime us for the first part about this, the data storytelling piece, I wanted to just explain at least my concept, Coeffect's concept about what data storytelling is. So with that, let me share my screen and pull this up. Just a quick data storytelling primer. Can everybody see this on my screen? Cool, thanks. Data storytelling is really the intersection of four things. The first is context, and this is sort of understanding what your audience needs and what they already know. The situation that your audience is in. The second is narrative. This is the story that you're trying to tell in general. What is the beginning, middle, and end of this story you're trying to communicate? The third is data. What's the actual data that helps you tell that story, that adds some nuance to that story? And then the fourth are visuals. So how do we visualize that data so that it's more memorable? And this is where the whole data visualization body of knowledge comes into play. And we won't actually explicitly touch on that, but we're going to see a lot of that information. So I just want to describe, when I say data storytelling, this is really what I mean. And I want to give credit. There's a really excellent local graphic artist, nonprofit data guru, if you will. She wouldn't like to be called that, but her name is Lydia Hooper, one of my mentors in this space. And she actually originated this way of describing this. So I want to give her credit where credit's due if anybody's worked with her. you know that she's awesome. The other thing I want to mention is that, data storytelling is not different from regular storytelling. And so any of us who have gone through any kind of creative writing process or even intuitively know that stories have a beginning, middle, and end. And so there's this sort of traditional three act structure that we probably learned in an English class at some point back in the day, that explains how, stories sort of start by setting the context, a setup, if you will. You tend to create some rising action. You tend to try and sort of build a little bit of conflict that encourages or creates sort of a pivot point, an opportunity or an imperative for change, that then leads to the resolution of your story. And so this is something I keep in mind when I'm thinking about data storytelling. I try and think, how do I actually tell a good story first, and then layer data on top of that? And so, how this often plays out when you're telling data focused stories, you're using data to set the context in the first part of your story. You're sharing some insights, some things that were learned that maybe were surprising. Maybe you didn't anticipate, and some of which you probably did anticipate, in the middle part of your story. And then you're introducing an opportunity to act at the end of your story. And as data people, I've found myself, I don't naturally include this opportunity to act. I don't naturally include a call to action, but that's actually really important when you're in a data storytelling situation, to tell people how they should take a next step, how they can potentially get involved, what they can potentially do with this information based on their newfound knowledge. So I just want to cue that up as part of our conversation here. So with that, I'm gonna stop talking, and I've invited Linda and Teresa to just tell us a little bit about, what does data storytelling look like at RMMFI, particularly some of the maybe sort of the storytelling that you do with external audiences. I know that you've done a lot of great stuff with impact reports and other sorts of things. So wanted to just turn it over to you and sort of allow you to do a little bit of a show and tell. Illustrate some stuff that you're proud of that shows what data storytelling actually looks like in your world.
Cool. Thanks, Paul. I'm gonna kick us off for this first part and talk exclusively for now about our impact report and how I think this is a great tool that we've used for data storytelling with external audiences specifically. I'll walk through a little bit of like the context and the process, and then I can share my screen, the demo, do a little show and tell for our impact report, and then share a bit more of like my insights as to things we were thinking about, and kind of what's coming up next for us as we actually are starting this process all again right now. So context wise, last year was the first year that RMMFI did an impact report. So setting the stage that actually this is really new for us. I think like many organizations, perhaps in this room, we had been sharing our data externally in ad hoc ways, generally through grant reports or funder communications, and then maybe like some stats on our website, but didn't have a centralized place where people could really get the data story that is RMMFI, especially like over a specific point in time. And so there's a real need for something that had a little bit more like teeth to it. Um, in addition, we're a pretty grassroots organization. When I joined, we were 10, 11, 12 people on the team. We've grown really significantly in the last couple of years, and that has been in COVID. And so what used to be opportunities for a lot of in-person connections, engagements, and storytelling has transferred to online. And so we really wanted to meet our audiences where they're at, which is on the internet now, with something that could live on the web. Also coming out of COVID, I thought really intentionally about how we build trust in our communities and in RMMFI. As an organization, we went through a leadership change during COVID, moving from our first non-founder CEO, and so wanted to instill trust and confidence in that transition. And then also during COVID, our space, our kind of ecosystem became a little more crowded, and wanted to hone in on the true depth of impact that this work has been creating, at RMMFI for 15 years. And then we really wanted to showcase our theory of change and our impact framework and really help build our external audiences sort of comfort and knowledge around the impact that we seek to create. And so, like Paul mentioned, we started with our audiences in mind. I think most of the time, an impact report or an annual report is fairly funder focused. And I wanted to move away from that piece. While funders are one of our stakeholders, I wanted this to be a multi stakeholder focus. And so we really started with the question of what do each of our audiences or stakeholders get? What do we want them to get from our stories and our data? So we actually went like stakeholder by stakeholder. So for our entrepreneurs, we really wanted entrepreneurs to see themselves in the impact and really be proud to be part of the RMMFI community. My vision is that an entrepreneur can take our annual report and share it with another entrepreneur, and then it's really meaningful across folks who are our key stakeholder in that way. And so to that extent, that really changed the way that we shared information and kind of the format and the structure of the report. Kind of next up, we thought about our volunteers who are the mentors that really surround our entrepreneur community, making sure that they felt seen as part of this report as well, that they're an important piece of sort of the RMMFI engine, and that entrepreneurs are succeeding in part because of their contribution. And then we had a tertiary focus around its funders and partners, really around mutual impact. And so I'll talk about this in a minute, but making sure that we highlight other institutions, organizations, and funders working in this space because we are collectively building a stronger entrepreneurial ecosystem. It isn't just about RMMFI, the one organization. I started with some research because, like I said, this has been new to us. I'm sure I reached out to Paul. There was some planning guide that you can kind of Google around. One I really liked that we ended up following was Drew Stone Soup Creative, and I can make sure that resource gets out. I thought their guide was really solid in terms of process and the types of questions you want to ask your team. And then used a lot of Coeffect resources. So, Paul, you put out a newsletter at some point that had resources on structuring data stories, creating strong data visualizations, data narratives. And I referenced a lot of those resources as we were building the initial structure. It was also really important to me to look at what the landscape was doing. So pulled from a variety of other organizations and institutions, what reports we did and didn't like, being able to pick out different aspects, especially around the data piece and making data really accessible to an external audience. We pulled a lot of the annual reports from peers in our network, so other mission-based lenders and entrepreneur support organizations to better understand what themes were emerging, making sure that since we have similar external audiences and actually we do a lot of warm handoffs to other organizations in our space, that we are aware of the ways that other organizations are talking about their work. One, so we're not like overly duplicating things, but that we're like recognizing sort of our role in that broader space. And then it was really important for me to think through diversity, equity, inclusion, and accessibility best practices in this really key piece of external data storytelling. So making sure we are using asset-based language, like poverty tourism concepts, really putting the entrepreneur at the center of the journey, highlighting their not just their struggles, but the success that they've done as much as possible. We have names and business, really just like trying to build the brand for our entrepreneurs. And then, of course, getting informed consent for all photos, for all stories, and all quotes. Then that is totally embedded throughout the report. We wanted to, another best practice that we integrated into this report is calling out other partners in the space. So like I shared, like absolutely this is RMMFI's impact report from last year, but we couldn't do our work without a lot of other institutions that we work with. So explicitly calling out, like shouting out some folks we love to work with and making sure that they're getting a little bit of airtime and that we're sharing the mic in that way. So we're not over recognizing say just funding partners, but we are recognizing the other site and sector partners we have in the space. I built a really intentional team. It doesn't make sense to do this kind of stuff alone. There's a lot of blind spots that any one person has. And so thought intentionally about who from the organization was on the sort of like core project team. So Linda and I were repping from the impact and the data side. We had our marketing lead and our community engagement head to really think through stories and sort of how you influence and use some of our common language. We had our development team for that funder and that volunteer perspective. And then our CEO was involved in this project from the beginning. And I think having that seat at the table made this something that had a lot of teeth in our work. And then, like I mentioned, when I sort of kicked things off, we grounded this report in our theory of change. So the whole format and structure of the report is around ownership pillars: ownership of self, ownership of wealth, and ownership of community health. And we highlight different data and stories throughout that. So, in a series of brainstorming conversations, I took this whole crew and we asked ourselves, towards ownership of self, ownership of wealth, and ownership of community health, what activities did we do this past year? What challenges did we come across and what did we learn? What stories do we want to highlight? What data and outcomes do we want to highlight? And then what key themes were emerging so we can give our audience something to rally around through the report. Through a series of brainstorming conversations, the theme that was emerging was listening, learning, and then innovating for results. And I will use this opportunity to just show you all a little bit. Actually, I have this in the chat so people can follow along. Here's our impact report. We start with our team. Nice to see everybody. I should have mentioned this is all web-based. So we embedded this in a web page on our website, which I think was a really powerful way to make this accessible and give it some longevity as well. I'll briefly walk through these. So to kind of kick things off, we started with a little bit of a message from our CEO. One of the things that I loved that we did was a little different was we made this a video. I was trying to avoid just a full text or a full data report. So other ways that people process information. And we kind of kicked off the theme here around listening, learning, and innovating. So I introduced that from the beginning. We started the report with like, hey, what are we about? So this is our North Star and our DEIA statement of commitment. And then it's theory of change, which was a really cool way for me to kind of kick things off. So hopefully this should look familiar. So it's about who we serve, the activities that we work on. And then here is our 3 big impact pillars. Before we got into the impact sort of like structure of the report, I wanted to offer people some fast facts. So kind of quick stats on who our entrepreneurs are and sort of the scope of services that we provided last year. So these are like real quick outputs. So, number of entrepreneurs that we serve, the number of boot camps that we ran, quick stats around how much capital we deployed. A little bit of information on some of our entrepreneur demographics, the industries that our entrepreneurs work in, and then where you can find us. So we'll map of Colorado. But from there, we focused on a lot meatier of content. So here is our sort of introduction to the ownership of self pillar. We have different ways that we listened and innovated, sort of kicked things off with that. And then here's the results from those different ways of adjusting and improving our work. And these are our more of our outcome metrics that are closer tied to the bigger things that RMMFI wants to achieve. So instead of just how many entrepreneurs do we serve and how many boot camps do we run, it was entrepreneurs who are self-reporting that they are on a path to achieving what they want in life, or feeling more confident in themselves, or feeling more ready to launch the business. Like these are the ones that are more interesting. Some of this can be hard to sort of visualize on its own. And so, well, we did some little news sources where you can like find us on the web. Um, but really, the next big focus here is the entrepreneur highlights. And so we um, worked with entrepreneurs to tell their story in a way that really highlighted the ownership pillar that it was embedded underneath. So, for example, for Ria, we wanted to highlight the different ways that she's been not only involved in the organization, but involved in a lot of leadership to really like first glance kind of talk through that ownership of self concept and then hear sort of the story of her business and personal trajectory, really bringing to light some of those pieces of outcome data. And we have a couple of different stories, so making sure we get a variety of different perspectives embedded in here. And then that's the theme. Got some other, we like to call it entrepreneurs, give them a little shout out. But the theme throughout then is the ownership pillar. So here's ownership of wealth. We have the different ways that we listened and innovated the ways that this shows up through some of our outcome metrics. So, since the ownership of wealth is focused much more on the growth of the business and using that as a tool for financial security, we have some stats around entrepreneurs who feel ready to take on new business growth, whose businesses are open and active after a certain point of time, and who have some sort of capital stack in their trajectory for their business. Again, we've got like our little news sources and then more entrepreneur highlights. So since this ownership pillar was focused on wealth and wealth building over time, we highlighted some of the capital involvement, the different types of loan products that entrepreneurs have taken from us. And then again, their sort of story that brings some of that data to light. Use as many photos as possible to just make things really accessible. And then finally, we have our ownership of community health. This is focused on leadership building. Um, Here's our different ways we listened and innovated. The specific stats we have around how entrepreneurs show up in leadership roles, how folks are active in their communities, and then for folks who return back to our network and actually mentor other entrepreneurs. Little news sources, and then we structured this around quotes. So felt like one person's story wasn't truly like bringing that data and that ownership pillar to light. And so instead, we have entrepreneurs, their business, where they live, and then a quote that they had about what being a business owner means for them, showing up as a role model, as a community leader, wanting to create more opportunities for others in the entrepreneurial ecosystem. Highlighting Ava because she was part of our Spanish language program. And so we opted to keep her quote entirely in Spanish. And then highlighting some other entrepreneurs as well. Finally, and I think with the financials, this is actually a key piece of like transparency that I'm really happy that we're able to include here, especially as we think about a multi-stakeholder audience. And then we have just one small stat here around one of the cooler, I think, analyses that we do around how we better understand the ripple effects of our work in the community and over the long term. And so this is our social return on investment. So for every dollar that we spent last year, we have a massive amount of data that shows we have just about $4 are returned from that in a variety of social and economic impact. And then finally, we did have our call to action. So these are all live links that direct to other areas of our website so folks can get involved in the ways that make most sense for them. And that's the big report. A couple of things that I'm thinking, we were thinking about is one, relatability. So making sure that we combined data with charts and images as much as possible, or intentionally structuring the quick data, the outputs right up front, and then moving towards the meatier data, the outcome data in the middle, and combining that with a story to really bring that to life. On the back end, doing a lot of work to document our different data sources, timelines, and make sure that we are pulling data that is really high quality and really reliable. So we have a lot of confidence and trust as we're sharing that out externally. We did a lot. Hopefully, you saw a lot of photos. It was important for me to like put a face to a piece, to a face to a number. And so we have a lot of photos, a lot of direct quotes from entrepreneurs, just a lot of ways for people to like see a business owner in space. And then for me, feedback was really important. We probably had 5 or 6 iterations of this report, not only from the core team, but also from entrepreneurs, from board members, and from a variety of perspectives. And then while I think the web was the most accessible way to access this, we did create some other points. So we have it in a PDF. It's able to be printable in case people want to view this information in different ways. Um, Quickly, why I'm really proud of this report as our first go around. I was excited that we could get beyond outputs into actual medium term, longer term, meaningful metrics. And that's something that I definitely want to mirror again as we do this next year. I love the kind of richness and color that stories and quotes provide. I think that's another way that this is a very asset based report. And then I love that it is just the foundation is our theory of change and that we were able to introduce our community to this type of framework in a way that hopefully feels really accessible. And then I guess lastly is what's next. I mentioned we're doing this again. As you notice, it's pretty light on data visualization. It's mostly just sort of fast facts and charts. I would love to include some more robust data visualizations and maybe even make that interactive. It's kind of like a pipe dream I have. We'd love to do more co-building with entrepreneurs. I think we did a good job of getting a lot of feedback throughout the process. But the next step is actually get more entrepreneurs in the design room and in those brainstorming meetings. And then finally, we have a line of our work that is in Spanish. And so in the future, we will have 2 impact reports and one will be entirely in Spanish. That way we can make content that's accessible to our full entrepreneur community. And with that, that's it.
Yeah, I love that, Teresa. Thank you so much for walking us through this. There are so many things that I appreciate and really enjoyed about your impact report, how it's structured, how you thought about scaffolding. So the most important information is up front, but people can go deeper if they want to. I mean, you're doing all the right things in terms of data visualization, it's on point, and in terms of branding, in terms of use of color. And one thing that struck me that I just want to highlight because you said, okay, we're designing it for different audiences. We want it to be meaningful to entrepreneurs. We want entrepreneurs to see themselves in it. And your impact report is so positive. Like as a small business owner myself, I am inspired by this to know that entrepreneurship can make a meaningful impact in my community. And so I just want to give you all kudos on all of that. And so let's open it up now to folks for questions. We've got a few minutes. I would love any questions that folks have about this particular example of external facing data storytelling that they would like to post to Teresa. So feel free to come off of mute or put them in the chat and I can read them out.
Hi, this is Maggie. Can I kick us off?
Please.
I can flip this on too. I would love to learn more about the data that you collected to determine that 4x ROI. That is like one of the most exciting things to me to see that kind of ripple out effect. And I'm sure it took a lot of work to calculate that.
Yes. Yeah. So the sort of background around the social return on investment is when I used to work in fundraising, I was tired of people asking me like, for what does my money really like get me? How many XYZ supplies can I buy? Or how many staff hours do I buy? And I thought that that was the wrong question. And instead, it's like, actually, what is the impact that my dollar creates when invested in this work? And so that was kind of like the impetus behind trying to shift the way we thought about a financial metric for the impact of, say, a donation or a dollar invested in an organization. We do a lot of work to translate the metrics that we're able to track as one single organization and combine them with external research. So really the key piece is like we have a big kind of library of resources that is essentially research conducted by other institutions, universities, think tanks, groups that have done the work to say this intervention leads to this um, type of impact. And so we like kind of first looking at our own internal data, combining that with the external research. We have a whole section of our social return on investment that documents all of the unknowns that happen when you take something that we do and combining it with a research study that wasn't necessarily about us, but about the intervention that we provide. We kind of like discount a lot of potential impact just in order to be fully transparent and really conservative in that. And then we take a look at our budget and then how, like, what actual dollars we invested toward different aspects of our work, sort of like put that all in equation to come up with that number. What I really like about this as an internal tool is it actually helps incentivize us to work with um, our sort of like folks with the highest barriers. So, for example, we have a line of our work that is working with formerly incarcerated entrepreneurs who have been part of the criminal justice system. There's a lot of research to show that different workforce development, small business ownership, these types of intervention can have really powerful ripple effects for recidivism, community safety, and the overall um, income trajectory of a formerly incarcerated entrepreneur or person. And so when we look at how we spent our dollars and actually working with a greater percentage of our network is formerly incarcerated, that impact step goes way up because the potential for impact, reducing recidivism, for example, which itself is a really expensive, it's just an expensive intervention. Um, the more folks we work with those high barriers, the higher SROI is, even if it costs more money to sort of invest in the whole person. So I like that different type of framework. Um, I am talking a little bit at like the 20, 30,000 foot, but we do have some resources that we put together around our process for thinking about this and how we go about kind of collecting a library of research towards this, which I would be happy to share. I also think we have a blog post on our website that documents a little bit about this type of analysis.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
Teresa, if you want to share that stuff with me, I can send it out to everybody. Go ahead, Maggie.
Oh yeah, I was just gonna kind of chime back that it feels like that gives a lot of like intrinsic motivation for staff to continue working in some of the harder spaces as well. So it's not just like externally beneficial for funding and partnerships, but also just like internal gusto for the people doing the work. So that's great. Thank you.
Totally. And one of the ways that we're trying to use this in the future is as we engage more in policy advocacy and systems change work is like, hey, like we can redesign some of the policy and the public programs that we have to create more impact. And here's one of the ways that we can look at it.
Yeah. Yeah. Thanks for that question, Maggie. That's awesome. Um, Anybody else have questions related to some of this external data storytelling pieces that we've mentioned so far?
I'll jump in with a question. Curious how, if at all, you've thought about um, integrating like a learning agenda or learning question into the framework. So I love how the report is tied to the outcomes in your theory of change. And probably like many questions in contexts like these, I'm just thinking about challenges I'm having um, in my own work where it's like, are we sort of presenting the data that like the sort of the direct measurements of the outcomes that's available, or are we it just gets complicated in my opinion to like also have an additional layer of learning questions in addition to like measuring what is in our theory of change. So I'm wondering if you've thought about how to like integrate those two. Does that make any sense?
That totally does. And we should talk because this is something we're doing right now.
Oh,
So,
fun. Okay, great.
we are actively working to translate our theory of change as a logic model and kind of like an impact framework to guiding learning questions as an organization and really developing our first sort of like formal learning agenda. We
Mhm.
have a variety of strategies that we use to reflect and learn throughout the year on a variety of our priorities and initiatives for the year. So kind of like how we handle work. But we haven't yet like formalized into that sort of more learning agenda mindset. So uh,
Mhm.
in progress, and I would
Yeah.
love to. So now that we've done the theory of change for this impact report, we're going to like shake up the structure a little bit for next year. And one of the things that I think could be presented in the future is more of that like learning lens. Cool. Thank you.
Yeah, and Mandana, I would just add to that how I typically use a learning agenda in my practice with organizations is as a focusing mechanism on the theory of change. So, like the theory of change has like each of these outcomes. Like there are these three aspects of ownership of self, for example. And so it's like, so it implies, the learn question for each of those is to what extent is that outcome happening? To what extent is this outcome happening? And then often I'll sort of help folks think through like, okay, which of these questions are most strategic for us to answer now? And so that's often how I'll use it is like a way to sort of focus in on, particular aspects of our theory of change are the highest priority things we're going to measure and look into this year. And maybe next year it will evolve. So I don't know that that is necessarily right or wrong. I think there are different people that use that tool differently, but that's how I use a theory of change and a learning agenda together.
Awesome. Thanks so much. That's really helpful.
Yeah, for sure. Um, so we have a second part of this conversation related to how do we engage folks in meaningful data conversations? And so I think maybe let's move there. I want to make sure that we can cover that, and then we'll wrap. We will certainly have time for Q&A about that and or any other data storytelling questions that come up here as well. So why don't we move on to that piece? And I wanted to just, share a couple slides to set the stage. When I say, data engagement, what do I mean by that? So let me share my screen, provide a little bit of sort of definition and context setting, and then I'm going to turn over to Linda to tell us a little bit more about this. Can you all see my slides here? Yeah, good. Awesome. So essentially, when I'm talking about data engagement, I want everybody to keep in mind that data analysis is a team sport. Think of data analysis like soccer. There are certain people with certain leadership roles at different times, but it takes a village of people coming together. And the reason for that is that while data analysis to some people may feel like a purely objective task, it's the data say what the data say. The truth is everybody brings their own history, their own knowledge, sometimes their own baggage to a data task. And so having multiple people involved in that task helps surface different perspectives and ways of understanding data that almost always make the end result better than if just one person was tasked with analyzing and looking at data. So I believe fully the data analysis is a team sport, and there are a lot of fun ways to structure conversations around data and have meaningful interactions, even if the people that you're trying to engage don't consider themselves data people. That's certainly not necessary. Um, One thing I want to mention is this concept of a data project lifecycle. And Linda and Teresa will tell you, yeah, there's this life cycle is there are projects at a bunch of different parts of this life cycle going all at once. But if we think about any data task as sort of sitting on a cycle from designing how we're going to collect the data to actually going about collecting the data to doing some exploratory analysis, just trying to understand what it means, and then finally, explanatory analysis and communication, trying to tell people, okay, here's what we learned from this. This is what we should do next. You can kind of use this framework to think about almost any data project. And so when I talk about sort of data engagement and participatory analysis, it sort of sits at this exploratory analysis step. I really think it's important to include other staff and individuals with lived experience in the thing that you collected data about at this stage, because then this helps sort of define the meaning, define the narrative that you want to communicate in your data story. And I think this is a really important aspect about ethical data practice and equitable data practice is letting the right people have some influence in the story that's told about their data. So that's why this is so important. You'll have all this afterwards, so you can check this out. The one other thing that I want to just share, whenever you're facilitating conversations around data, here are some of the practices that I try and abide by. Always share some sort of pre-read that's accessible to the people that you're engaging. So that means that you're going to need to probably do a little bit of data visualization. It doesn't have to be perfect, but you're going to need to sort of make the data not just like a nasty looking spreadsheet, but something that somebody can understand and internalize if they're not people that love looking at spreadsheets all day. So you want to share data in advance, give people some time to sort of understand it, but also provide time in your discussion for reviewing that data and for people to ask questions about the validity and the strengths of that source. Then it makes sense to discuss this data and distill it. And oftentimes this is smaller group conversations. And so I've included a bunch of different potential conversation starters here. And you really want to think, okay, what's the objective of talking about this data together as a group? But you can use any of these kinds of conversation starters as potential sort of prompts for that discussion. Some of these, are really sort of making sense of the data, like what surprised you, what stood out to you. Some of them are helping us understand the source, like what was missing about this data that you thought would you see? What other comments do you have about this data? Some of this is maybe thinking about what are the next steps. So, based on what you learned, what would you suggest needs to be done moving forward? So, again, these will really vary depending on the kind of conversation you want. But I want to share these as a starting point. So when I talk about sort of data engagement, this is the sort of thing I'm talking about. And Linda, I want to turn it over to you and sort of paint the picture of what this actually looks like in RMMFI's practice.
Yeah, thanks, Paul. That's a really great setup for our internal data storytelling practice at RMMFI. And before I get into like the meat and of things, I kind of just want to ground us in like why we do internal storytelling at RMMFI. And really, when you look at the theory of change of what Teresa was talking about, we're focusing in on the key activities and the outcomes and focusing on that so that we can build a culture of learning within those pieces of the theory of change. I also want to support the team in doing data informed decision making. A lot of times we hear stories anecdotally, but then sometimes we want also the data to either align with that or tell us the opposite, right? And kind of double check what we are thinking. And also continuous quality improvement. I do a lot of internal storytelling within our programs and our processes so that we can have better quality in our program and like efficiency or even just like their experience as entrepreneurs, as volunteers in the program. And lastly, I think internal storytelling is important because it builds accountability and ownership. So ownership is one of our core, our guiding principles at RMFI, and we impact as a department. We are accountable to our internal teams because we have so much data. What are we doing with it? It's just we don't want it to just sit in our CRM, right? So we want to be able to be accountable to our team and sharing out what we are learning. And also our internal team is accountable to us. They are the ones who are sending out their surveys, survey links, and asking entrepreneurs, following up and being the front center person as they are asking for those responses. And then lastly, we are accountable to all of our stakeholders. We ask a lot of our entrepreneurs and our volunteers, and we want to be able to use their data in a way that it improves the experience overall. So accountability, ownership, definitely key in our internal storytelling pieces. So today I'm going to dive into a key example of this and it's called internal retrospectives. And we do this by site. And I'm going to pick on our Denver Metro Region team. And so our Denver Metro Region team is made up of 3 sites. We've got Denver, Aurora, in our Spanish language program. And within each site, we have 2 key programs 3 times a year. So we've got Business Idea Lab and Business Launch Bootcamp 3 times a year, winter, summer, and fall. And so with those internal retrospectives that I host, we review findings from program surveys. So this is pre-post assessments, this is mentor evaluations, and also mentor surveys. So entrepreneurs evaluate their mentors, mentors evaluate, well, their experience as a mentor. And then, so we start off with that. And then I also facilitate the open discussion with the team where I pose questions and then I completely silent, just let people answer with their context and their stories. So the process of before I go into the process, who is involved? As Paul was saying, it's a small meeting. I include staff members who were involved in the implementation of the program. So that is our volunteer team, our site coordination team. That is the team that works with entrepreneurs from initial intake all the way through their entrepreneur journey. And then our education team. So those who are involved in training, creating curriculum for our program. So those are the key staff members that are involved in this. And with the process, I'm going to start off with what we do before, during, and after. And I will share my screen to show you what are the templates and tools that I use to communicate this data. So before the meeting, our staff members, they send the survey link, collect those responses. I download, clean the data sheet, and then I throw it into a Google Sheet template. And so this is a template that I've duplicated for every program, for every site. And it's a data dump it kind of calculates everything. And then I also review the qualitative data as well. And then I write an executive summary. This is a brief one-page summary with the findings. I combine all of the PDFs of all the different Google Sheets into one big PDF so that people can just see it right away. And so with that, I'm going to share my screen so that you can see what that looks like. So this is a survey findings sheet that I sent out for our spring cycle for our Denver site. The executive summary, we've got Idea Lab at the top and Bootcamp here. And then you can see it's just very short bullet points of what I heard from the data, both quantitative and qualitative. I've also included some quotes that I thought were important to share from the surveys to contextualize that data. And then within each, I also included, after the cover page, PDF copies of the actual Google Sheets themselves. And then you can actually click onto this link and go into the Google Sheet itself. The reason why I use Google Sheet and Google Docs is we are a very Google-heavy organization, and staff members are very comfortable with using Google Sheets, using Google Docs. So for me to have this data show up in Google Sheets makes it more comfortable for them to digest. And so you can see here, like within this particular Google Sheets, there are some hidden tabs. So I've got instructions. This is just for if there's other people in my role in the future, so they have idea of what to do with this template. Pre-post, this is where I dump in the clean data set, and then it spits out onto this analysis page. And so this is the page that I eventually add into the PDF. And then, before I send it out, I always hide all the sheets. So before, and then let me just click on this and go back to that. And then with this executive summary, I then send all of this in an email to the staff the day before the meeting. That doesn't give much time for the staff members to review the data, but the reason that is just because of program calendars. I have to provide enough time for entrepreneurs and volunteers to give me responses and then analyze that data and dump it into the templates that I have here. Then during the meeting, I share my screen. I walk through each Google Sheet and I read out the highlights as written in the executive summary. So sometimes people don't have time to go through the executive summary. So I just like to read things out loud, kind of highlight things. And then before we get into the open discussion, I ask questions related to the data. Are there any clarifications, anything that you are seeing that might be interesting? For example, sometimes we see negative in gains, for example, from pre to post. And so we really sit with that discomfort, I would say, but it ultimately gets resolved in that we've talked about it, right? And then the other half of the meeting is I open up the floor to discussion with 2 key questions. And it's always the same 2 questions. I probably will change it in the future, but um, they are what went well and why. We spend 15 minutes probably on that. What can be improved and how? And so these are the 2 like learning questions that I like to pose in these meetings. And my role during this piece is I'm the note taker, I'm the facilitator. I redirect or I ask follow-up questions to clarify, but I don't like to insert myself because I don't have the lived experience, right? And so I'm the note taker, I'm the facilitator. And then I also encourage the team to think about the whole program from outreach all the way through to graduation and really set that framework for them. And so, with that being said, as the note taker and facilitator, I feel accountable to the team. So, I always take notes. I recap key takeaways and action steps, which wraps up our internal retrospective meeting. Then, after the meeting, I clean up my notes, send it out to all staff. And so that's pretty much how our cycles of learning have showed up in RMFI. And depending on the site or like the program itself, sometimes I do program specific internal retrospectives, just depending on the need, right, of our organization. And then I have a little time here, so I wanted to kind of dive into my observations as internal retrospectives have become more integrated at RMFI. So I've been doing this for about a year and a half now. So I've done 4 cycles of this. And some of the things that I've seen change over time is that staff becomes more comfortable. They're used to seeing the executive summary, they're used to seeing my Google Sheets. So they're more comfortable with the data, more comfortable with adding their own context, right? So when I ask the question of like, hey, does this align with what you've been seeing in this particular cohort? Um, they're more comfortable with speaking up and saying, yeah, I did see that entrepreneurs improved in their speaking skills or that they were more comfortable with their finances. So they can add context to the data that I'm sharing. The other thing that I've observed is that we've built this in a habit. So now everyone knows that at the end of a program cycle, you're not done yet. We will stop and we will reflect on what has happened. And there are still little kinks, capacity for more meetings and scheduling conflicts, but I think it has become habit for people to reflect on what has happened. And then also, as we've grown, there has been capacity to take on action steps. So at the beginning, a, I felt a little awkward because we would name things that needed to move forward in terms of action steps, and like there was no one really to pull that through just because of capacity. But our team has grown to a point where there is capacity to follow through on action steps, whether it be like, oh, we need to improve our communication with our mentors, for example. Um, Sometimes it was uncomfortable because I was like, oh, who's going to take that on? Who has the capacity to do that? And I felt like it wasn't like my place to move forward with that. But I think it was important to start having those conversations so that we could have a parking lot of action steps. And then as they build over time or as they maybe fall off the parking lot, whatever happens, it plants the seed in that we need to build capacity for this. And even if there isn't capacity to take it on, those action steps that we named them and that they are there and that we recognize that there are improvements to be made. And so I'm really excited that like this past cycle, 2 of my coworkers have been able to take this on and be like, okay, these are action steps. This is what we're going to do and move forward with those. And a couple of things related to like what's next. How do we continue on with these internal storytelling pieces? One of the things that I want to work better on is finding a way to archive this. So we've got a lot of data sheets. I've got a lot of Google Sheets, a lot of meeting notes. How do we make this accessible to the team? So we internally are working on a LMS system for our internal organization on like how do we archive notes and keep them in one spot so people aren't digging through Impact's Google Drive to find meetings and meeting notes. And then the last thing is to just continue meeting making with this team. So it is helpful to zero in on one cohort, one program, but it also can be limiting. So how do we zoom out? What does total Idea Lab look like? What does total business launch bootcamp look like? What are the stories that we're seeing at an aggregate level? And so that's like the next like version 2.0 of this. How do we have collaborative discussions with those who are not in the room? There are a couple of questions that are related to our capital team. How do we engage them on this learning process? And then lastly, data visualizations tool. As you can see, I used Google Sheets. And so I have a Google Sheet for everything. But how do we expand interactivity with the data at again at an aggregate level, but also how do we zero in using data visualization to help us do that? So we are looking into Zoho Analytics. Zoho is our suite of applications we use. It's like Tableau as a way to organize this data so that Aurora can see themselves compared to Denver, compared to overall, like all in one space, and provide that transparency across all sites, across all regions within our. So yeah, that's our internal retrospectives and how we do internal storytelling.
Love that, Linda. Oh, thanks so much. I'm always just blown away at your Google Sheet wizardry. I think all of us need more Lindas in our lives. One really specific question. So I want to open this up to questions from everybody. One really quick question for you. I would love if you could paint the picture of how much time does the retrospective take? Like how long is that meeting for everybody? And also how much time do you need to put in now to, kind of prepare for that? Because I think that just painting that picture is really helpful for folks to know what it takes, to create this sort of learning habit.
Yeah, yeah. So for the meeting itself, it lasts anywhere between 45 minutes to an hour. My data piece is pretty short. It's like 5 minutes at the beginning, and then we really get into the discussion questions, which is where I keep quiet. Everyone talks, which is great. For me, to prepare for that though, I think it takes probably an hour to 2 hours, depending on how much I need to clean the data, set it up, and send it all out. I think a lot of the time though is spent in the process phase. And by that, I mean waiting for responses, following up with entrepreneurs and volunteers for this data. So I would say probably for each site, it probably takes about 1 or 2 hours, depending.
Yeah. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's awesome. And I
And oh, I was
go
sorry. I
ahead.
wanted to add like once I set up the Google Sheet once, like that's the where the I reduced and made it efficient. I just dump and then kind of spits everything out for me. So that kind of the initial setup was a bit longer.
Yeah, I was hoping that you would say that because
Yeah.
I mean, it's so smart that you created essentially this repeatable process. So
Yep.
you don't have to reinvent the analysis wheel every time you do this. You're using a similar survey tool, and
Hmm.
you're using a similar analysis template. And so it speeds that up. And I think I wanted to really emphasize to everybody. I mean, these boot camps that you do, I know it's tens, probably collectively hundreds of hours of staff time, certainly hundreds of hours of volunteer time. Thanks, Maggie,
Hmm.
by the way to do this boot camp. So asking everybody to participate in an hour-long meeting and then you taking an hour to prep the data is, I mean, it's a meaningful time commitment, but it's very reasonable.
Hmm.
I think that sort of thing should be within the reach, of a lot of organizations to make happen. So I just want to emphasize that.
Yeah.
So let's open it up. What questions are folks coming up with related to sort of data engagement and this internal data storytelling piece that Linda shared? And I think that this is also a time to ask any other questions that are on folks' minds as, we've got another sort of 10-15 minutes left in today's workshop. So I'll be quiet and let y'all bring up the questions that are coming up for you. I am sure that somebody's got a question here. Thank you, Cassie. I am sure that somebody has something. Yeah, absolutely, Christina.
I'm a
100%.
huge Linda fan as well. And I think, Linda, you are so thorough in not only how you actually bring this information forward to our team, but clearly how you share this out with others. So kudos to that.
Yeah. Well, if nobody else has a question, I have one question that I wanna ask both of you, and then I think we can wrap things up, but I'm curious, like, you guys really do, I think, sort of, I use the term punch above your weight, you're doing really good work for a small team, in terms of data storytelling, data communications. I'm curious, like, where do both of you get some inspiration from in this realm? Like, what sorts of things are inspiring you or giving you ideas for how to do this work so well at your organization?
You want to kick us off, Linda?
Sure. Um, so in terms of like data storytelling, my mind goes straight to like visualization and like how do you tell the story. And I have a fashion design background. So for me, I always look at art and graphic design and like the ways in which like fonts or colors and things like that really tell data and tell a story. In addition to like small and big and like how things are laid out, if that makes sense. So I like really find inspiration in way of, and it may feel like kind of far away, but it's really close in terms of art and graphic design. So that's where I get a lot of my inspiration from. Um, and seeing like what is it that the artist wanted me to see, and am I seeing that? So wanting to create the same thing on the other side, like not to say I'm an artist, but to create that of like what is the point? What am I trying to say? And just say it. And did they get it? So I think that's where I get a lot of my inspiration from.
Love it,
Ugh,
yeah.
I love it.
So go ahead.
It shows, Linda. That's the thing. I think for me, a lot so, like, my whole career has been in nonprofits in various, community development spaces, and so I think a lot about the, bigger impact system. How are we part of an impact story that's, bigger than just our one organization, and how do we communicate that effectively? So, some of my, like, kind of go-to resources are, I really love the Stanford Social Innovation Review and Nonprofit Quarterly for the articles that they put out, which are like frameworks and trends and think pieces around individual, organizational impact, and collective impact. And so those are always my like when those newsletters hit my inbox, those are always the first ones to be read. Um, I know actually, Linda, you might have been the original person who shared this with me, but think a lot about data equity practices. And
Mhm.
so We All Count is a great resource for really intentionally embedding data equity practices and asking really thoughtful questions around are we capturing and sharing our data in the right ways for our broader social justice goals. And then I love Cohen, the Colorado Evaluation Network. We're AEA members, so that's the American Evaluation Association. Those are often a lot more on the research side of things, but I think provide a lot of insights that we can translate well, even in our more direct service organization work.
Yeah, love that. Oh, and we do have a question. Thank you, Samantha, because I this question was actually on my mind too. So I think this goes back to Teresa, the impact report. How long did it take? I guess like I'm guessing months, but maybe how many like have a sense of how many hours, how many people worked on it? What was your timeline like for that project?
Yeah, I was just thinking about this because we're starting it again. It took about two, 2 or 2.5 months overall. And really the piece that took the longest was the graphic design, web design, and we hired a contractor to do that work. Our team, so our core team was like 4 or 5 people. Like I mentioned, we got feedback from a lot of other folks. The team itself met, let's see here, probably every other week for those 2 months. So it was a fairly significant time investment. Really getting to that like brainstorming piece was the bulk of the work. And then I took on a lot of the logistics. So for me, like during those 2 months, maybe this was 10 to 15% of my workload. Just not an insignificant time investment. For others on the team, closer to an hour or two, or maybe three a week, concentrated in a couple of different key meetings. When I'm thinking about this for next year, or for like actually this upcoming year, I'll definitely we'll want to create the same type of team. I think having multiple voices in the room is really important. But I think that timeline is going to be able to be a little condensed. We're going to work with the same web graphic designer we did last year, which means they have a lot of our like branding guidelines and baseline images. We have a little bit more of a system built for the data collection across the organization, the kind of storytelling and photograph collection pieces, like all of the logistical background. So I'm expecting maybe like 30% less time this year now that we have a little bit of those systems in place.
Awesome. Awesome. Yeah, that's super helpful. And it seems well worth it. It's just a really great impact report. So, can't wait to see
And
the
I guess I'll
latest.
share too. Yeah, thanks, Paul. I'll share too. Some organizations just outsource all of this work. I don't think that's a wrong way to do it. You could hire someone who really does all of the design in terms of content. However, I wanted our team to be more involved to make sure that really deeply reflected the voice and intentions of the organization. So we sort of took on the extra time ourselves to really highlight that piece that I thought was really important.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Love it. Yeah, and I'll share out the links to the impact report, and I've got a whole browser tab full of links that we'll share out for some of the things that we've mentioned today. So in terms of wrapping up, actually, here's one last question for Teresa and Linda, which is, are there any asks of that RMMFI has of this group? Are there any ways that you want to share, how folks can support your mission, or get involved with your organization, just in case they're curious after hearing all the cool stuff that you guys are working on here?
Yeah, would love to just be in touch with folks. As we've mentioned, we are still building out this arm of our work, and I'd love for even more sort of like guidance and resources as we go about this. Linda's been doing a handful of presentations with Denver Data Storytellers Network, so you can actually find her in a lot of spots highlighting her Google Sheet wizardry skills. Broadly, if you love data and coaching, consider becoming a mentor with RMMFI and helping to support a new business owner as one of their accountability coaches. Our entrepreneurs work on things like key performance indicators, establishing tracking spreadsheets. Some are interested in building, say, a CRM or other type of software. So if that is a skill set that you have and want to contribute to our small business community, we would absolutely love to have you as a volunteer. And then finally, for your goods and services, consider hiring some entrepreneurs in our network because we work with really amazing people across the state. You can go on our website and search our business directories for different goods and services you might like. I will say our website's about to be overhauled, and so it's not the best user experience. Another resource I would direct you to is a collaborative effort we're a part of with many different organizations across the state called shopbypoc.com. Shop BIPOC highlights businesses owned by BIPOC folks in Colorado, and you can search from a variety of different industries and services. And that's a really robust website to find some local folks.
Nice. Awesome. Yeah, and I just put a couple links to those things in the chat. So yeah, thanks for sharing that. Hopefully some folks are interested in getting more involved in RMMFI. From my end, from the Coeffect side, I wanted to just share. I've got some more resources. I think Teresa actually mentioned some of these before, but I put together at the end of the presentation, which y'all will have. I put together a few additional resources that I think might be relevant. So I've got a Coeffect hosted sort of data visualization checklist that's linked. Which I mean, this is honestly like the tool that Coeffect, like me and my team use whenever we're doing data communications. We'll actually check against this and say, are we doing data communications the right way here? Here are some of the baseline things. And like, you don't have to follow all these rules all the time, but it's nice to have a checklist. So I also have some of the tools and resources and books and blogs that I've used and found really helpful included here. So you can check those out. And then there are just a bunch of other sort of co-effect impact measurement related resources. Again, sort of our mission as an organization is to help small, medium-sized nonprofits put together the fundamentals of their data practice so they can get to the point to be doing all the cool stuff that Linda and Teresa are doing. And so these are all some of the resources that I have for free that help enable all of. So, and then you'll find in here just like about us, some content, how to contact us, that sort of thing. So, wanted to share that this will all be in your inbox, so you can check that out later. And yeah, I think that that's it. I wanted to thank y'all for staying with us for the last 90 minutes. This recording will go out so you can reference it along with a bunch of links and resources mentioned today. And just really appreciate your interest in telling meaningful stories with data and in learning about how the Rocky Mountain Microfinance Institute team does this. I think we can get a lot of inspiration from the different approaches different organizations do. And like I said, I think that Teresa and Linda, you're part of a small team that really does some excellent work for the size of team that you have and the resources at your disposal. So it's just really cool to learn from you and to seek inspiration from the things that y'all are doing. So
The feeling is mutual. Thanks so much we're really humbled to be able to be a part of this and share a little bit about like what we're thinking and working on. Paul and Co-Effect have been just instrumental parts of our organization for the last several years. Paul, not only the theory of change is something that is just a truly foundational piece for RMMFI, but we've been working with Paul and Co-Effect on some other data projects that are really transformational in how we get more data just directly in the hands of our entrepreneurs. And I think that that's really powerful. So thanks for your leadership in the space.
yeah,
Thank you, Paul.
yeah, 100%. 100%. Thanks to everybody for being with us today. So really appreciate it. Look for an email from me soon. Teresa and Linda, feel free to say any other things that you want to share. I think I've captured most of the links, but if there's anything else you want to share, just put in my inbox today and we'll get it out to everybody. All right.
Sounds good.
Well, okay, everybody. Have an awesome rest of your day, rest of your week. Thanks for being here and take care. Okay. Bye.